this desire to keep things light and true, even though she could have turned this memoir into something horribly soppy and tear-jerker type of misery memoir. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Today a wonderful memoir by a great British writer, English writer, Hilary Mantel. Hilary Mantel unfortunately died a few years ago, and she left behind a great deal of wonderful books. And the memoir we want to talk about today is called Giving Up the Ghost. It is from 2004, and it is really strongly linked to a small volume of short stories that Mantel had published in 2003 called Learning to Talk. And really, Learning to Talk are 5 or 6 short stories, I think, which are really sort of the fictionalized version of what will be published as Giving Up the Ghost. In other words, on one hand, Giving Up the Ghost, a memoir, and on the other hand, Learning to Talk, a book of short story, and really the two are the different versions of the same thing. This is an interesting discussion in itself, of course. You will all remember Siegfried Sassoon did the same, of course, with, on the one hand, his 3-volume trilogy, a fictionalized account of his life and his time at the front, and on the other hand, his diaries, for example, which was the slightly rewritten version of the truth as he had lived it day by day. Now, Hilary Mantel, you know, obviously, because she wrote this extremely famous worldwide bestseller, the Wolf Hall trilogy. Wonderful piece of historical fiction. I talked about it in relation to another sort of very different type of novel set in the same place and at the same time, 16th century London or England, more or less. And Hilary Mantel wrote, in fact, much more than simply the Wolf Hall trilogy. She also wrote notably Fudd, which is interesting, if a slightly cold novel, I thought. A Place of Greater Safety, of course, set during the French Revolution at the end of the 18th century. The Giant, recounting a world that Penelope Fitzgerald had also talked about. Word of the theatre and the stage in England. Beyond Black, which gave Hilary Mantel a great deal of recognition, I think, at the time. And then the Wolf Hall trilogy, starting in 2009 with the eponymous Wolf Hall. Now, Hilary Mantel's memoir is, in a way, in a great tradition of memoirs written by writers, where the purpose is not, of course, to reveal everything about oneself. It is to choose, to pick and choose, obviously, moments that are seen as being significant, typically, or memorable for one or the other reason. You probably know Vladimir Nabokov's Speak Memory, wonderful example of memoir, where Nabokov navigates through moments of his life, starting, of course, in Russia and ending in America. But really, the most part of Speak Memory is firmly about his childhood memories and his growing up in a certain world. And that is also what Mantel here does, because the biggest part, the most part of Giving Up the Ghost is really dedicated to her early years, as it were. Now, it could be, of course, a dedication to early years in the sense of this is what I did, and this is where I played with, and all the books that influenced me. But this is not exactly the road she's taking. Now, first of all, Hilary Mantel was not born in a rich family, nor in a very stable, traditionally stable family either. In other words, there were conflicts between her parents, and then she moved out with her mother, and then her mother took up residence with somebody else. So she was basically the product of a fractured marriage and family. And she grew up also in the north of England, where, if you are not English, perhaps you don't know, there is a very typically noticeable accent, which is different from, for example, the south of England, or a Scottish accent, obviously. And, as so very often is the case with accents, the northern accent also carries in English society, or carried at least, ideas about education, background, and suitability, as it were. So that's really the background that Hilary Mantel comes from. And loads of this memoir, this wonderfully, wonderfully written memoir, is very dedicated to sort of putting those elements together in front of us. Now, it would be very easy, and that is the first reason why this memoir is so wonderful, it would be very easy for her to turn this story into a sub-story, a violin playing type of story, where every element, the lack of money, the cold in the house, the tension in the house, all this could lead to some sort of very sad plays on the heartstring type of memoir, and a misery memoir. And we know that there have been many such memoirs in history, of course, but that is not at all what Mantel does. Mantel here displays an incredibly light touch in her style. And it is simply wonderfully sort of both spoken and at the same time extremely well chiseled. She has found a perfect middle, I think, between irony, self-deprecation, and seriousness as well. She doesn't hesitate to make fun of herself and of herself then, of course, or her family, or the environment, or the school she went to. But at the same time, she never pushes it too far. And that's the beautiful balance that she found, again, between being ironic, yes, but not too much, self-deprecating, yes, but after a while it can get a little bit repetitive, and seriousness of tone, and pathos. And she really, really found the perfect way to integrate all those elements. So she admits in the beginning that she was very reticent to write such an autobiography, and it is also because we know a few things when we have come across Hilary Mantel, and we know, for example, that she lived abroad, I think in Saudi Arabia, I might be wrong, Dubai, but she lived there for a while with her husband, and it was also known that she was in poor health, and that had made her life at times, notably when she emigrated for those few years, very, very difficult. And those things were known, but without necessarily being, discussed or anything, of course. And so what she needed really was, as she says in the introduction, a way to sort of talk about all those things. She needed the right type of form for this. She needed it to not be a completely chronological process, for example, but she also needed to retain some sort of consistency. And what is most remarkable, that's another reason certainly for reading this book, is that she, in a way, keeps us almost in suspense until the end, and she hints at her condition, as she calls it, but always in a sort of, well, far away, we'll talk about that later time of thing. Let's concentrate on the moment. But now and again, we get a hint that, well, she might tell us finally, of course, what plagued her all that time. And so, in that sense here, a great trick in that type of memoir is to be able to pick the right moments, the right type of evocation, the right type of anecdote. It is very easy in memoirs, certainly autobiographies as well, but memoirs certainly, it is very easy to become very anecdotal or very name-dropping if you are in a circle that has some name-dropping worth doing, or insist on details, or certainly go off at a tangent and start reflecting on one's psychology. That is all very fine, but here again Mantel demonstrates how great a writer she was, that is, somebody who really knows how to manipulate the tools of literature and the tools of writing, because she extracts moments that are extremely revealing, not only about herself, but about the environment itself. And that, I think, is a great trick that John Updike, in his marvelous, magnificent Self-Consciousness, one of the most magnificent books ever written, probably. And that's exactly what Updike does. He picks moments, and those moments are, yes, they're about him, but they're also about a moment, a context, a period, a place, other people. And that is the fullness and the richness of what Hilary Mantel gives us here in this little book. So this idea of keeping this revelation until last is, in a way, the most remarkable trait about this book. You may know a very, very different type of book. What is the What by Dave Eggers? It's probably a book that is at least 20 years old now, and it is the story of a boy, an African boy, whose family is decimated. And he decides to walk to a camp where he hopes to find help and, safety. And it is basically this young, very young boy walking on his own. He has no shoes, he's got no food, his parents are gone, his family is gone. And Dave Eggers could have turned this into a sob story, a misery memoir, trying to make you cry at every page, and please donate for the good cause. What is a wonderful book, because it avoids that completely and turns this story into something very different, almost hopeful and optimistic. And that's exactly what Hilary Mantel here does. When you finally learn, towards the end of Giving Up the Ghost, what plagued her throughout her life, and when she puts it in the context of her long, very long, lifelong medical history, where no one was able really to find what her problem was, and when they found what the problem was, it was not really believed, and when it was believed, there was very little to be done. It is something that she could have put right at the beginning of Giving Up the Ghost, this memoir. She could have put it in a preface. She could have put it in a foreword, in an introduction. She could have put it on the first page of the first part of the memoir. But no, she built up all this context. She built up that personality and that persona. She built up the Hilary Mantel when she was young and growing up and becoming a teenager. And it's only later that she drops the bomb, as it were, that is what exactly her condition was. And it is therefore here a beautiful thread, because it certainly informs us about all that we've read about. And she was never again writing a misery memoir before, so her struggles to adapt to a new environment when they moved houses and cities, her struggle with her northern identity and the sort of world she was presented, all those are certainly readable in a different way once you read the end of this beautiful memoir, and you realize that her condition was indeed something else. And it's not only the medical side of that condition, it is also the sort of social stigma is a strong word, social invisibility perhaps of that condition, which is slowly changing, but which at the time, of course, we're talking the 70s, the 80s in England, at the time was not either well known or very much talked about. And this is really spectacularly well done, because this culmination of the memoir in that revelation, again, she could have done it in the beginning, and this would have been a very, very different book. You would have read everything that she went through as some sort in relation to her condition. But here you don't. You read about what she did, how she grew up, how she evolved, and it's only then at the end that you think, well, not only did she do all this, she managed to get through that, but on top of it, she had this, and that was really debilitating and extremely, extremely damaging to her health in general. So, in that sense, Giving Up the Ghost is a monster of a memoir. If you have never read Hilary Mantel, there is no problem at all. You don't need to know her. You don't need to have read Hilary Mantel. It's an exemplary type of memoir where you get not only impressions about a certain place and a certain time, impressions about how somebody developed and became themselves, but also the structure of it, the build-up of it, and this desire to keep things light and true, even though she could have turned this memoir into something horribly soppy and tear-jerker type of misery memoir. She refused to find the easy way. She refused to use the easy way. She instead built a wonderful book, short, extremely powerful, very pleasant to read, stylistically admirable in its lightness of touch and irony, and at the same time, a terribly personal document and an example to all of us. So I hope you can find this book. I'm sure it's very easy to find and you will enjoy it, let me tell you right now. And of course, as usual, if you've liked this book and you would like to leave a word about it, let me know what you thought. It's always very much appreciated, along of course with liking and the like. Thank you very much, and until next time. Bye-bye.